Welcome everyone. On behalf of Walters Kluwer, a warm welcome to our speakers and attendees of this recent Advances in Gynecology webinar and the book launch of Berek and Novak Gynecology under our Medical Edge series. Our topic today is recent advances in gynecology. Our speakers today are Rashmi Malik, who is Associate Professor, Department of Obs and Gynae, UCMS and GTB Hospital, Delhi. We have with us Dr. A.G. Radhika, who is Senior Consultant, Department of Obs and Gynae, UCMS and Guru Tegh Bahadur Hospital, Delhi. We also have with us our guest of eminence, Dr. Geeta Radhakrishnan, who is ex-Department of Head of Department, Obs and Gynae, UCMS and GTB Hospital, Delhi. We'll be taking all the questions at the end of the webinar, and I request you to please post all your questions in the Q&A panel of this event. We'll try to address the maximum questions possible. Please also provide your valuable feedback via a link which we will be posting in the chat section of this webinar. Now, begin our session. I request Dr. Rashmi to please showcase her slides. Dr. Rashmi, over to you, ma'am.
On the sharing rights, I can't share. Okay, fine.
Thanks, ma'am.
There's the whole screen, no? Right?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead, ma'am.
I'll just start it. So, good evening, everyone. So, I'll be taking a small lecture on cervical interepithelial lesion screening and management. So, why is CIN? Because cervical cancer, it is the second commonest cancer in Indian females, and it is preceded by cervical interepithelial lesions. For a duration, these lesions are there before cervical cancer develops, and these are the lesions that we want to detect, and if detected early and treated, they will prevent the cervical cancer from occurring. Now, CIN is basically the dysplastic transformation of epithelium in the transformation zone of cervix. It can be of both the squamous and glandular epithelium. And this dysplastic transformation, it is caused due to persistent high-risk HPV virus infection in the epithelium, and these lesions typically originate in the transformation zone at the advancing squamocolumnar junction and or the adjacent glandular epithelium on the endocervical epithelium. If we look at the terminology or the classification over the years, it started with the dysplastic classification in 1953 on cytology. Nowadays, we talk of the histological classification, and later on in cytology, Bethesda system had come. So what we are basically concerned about are the histological high-grade squamous interepithelial lesions, which correspond to HSIL or SH on the cytology. So basically, histological SIL on it is either CIN2 or CIN3, which is basically a precancerous lesion. The HPV infection, there are 15 high-risk HPV types, and mainly HPV 16 and 18 are most commonly associated with the cervical cancer. When the HPV infection occurs, and most of the infections, they are in the latent phase or they get cleared off. But if they persist, they can lead on to productive infection, which will result in the low-grade interepithelial lesions, or if it switches over to become a transforming infection, then it becomes the high-grade lesions. And in these lesions, E6, E7, and P16 are more expressed, and they can develop onto cervical cancer. For the screening, cytology has been there, the conventional cytology or the pap smear, or even the liquid cytology with the same sensitivity and specificity, it is there. The automated cytology also can be used if it is available. The other test is primary HPV testing, whether the high-risk HPV virus genes are present or not in the cervical secretions or in these cells. If we combine the advantages of both these tests, the co-testing is there, HPV plus cytology, and that is what is recommended if facilities are available. And also visual inspection tests, like after application of acetic acid, we can screen the cervix with VIA, and if these facilities are not available. If we look at the sensitivity and specificity of this test, cytology is a very good, very specific test, but it is the disadvantages of low sensitivity of 40 to 60%. On the other hand, HPV has a very good sensitivity, but specificity is low. That is why co-testing has come up, combining the improving the sensitivity and specificity if both tests are done. if you look at the national guidelines of which were given by FOXI in 2019 or 20, the cytology, if facilities are available, in recommended for from age group of 25 to 65 years, and cytology is to be done every 3 years, but if possible, HPV and cytology is to be done after 30 years of age every 5 years. But if these resources are limited, at least screen once and preferably 3 times with visual inspection method after application of acetic acid after the age of 30 years. For the management of these, if the abnormality is detected on these screening methods and how to manage these pre-invasive or intraepithelial lesions, the FOXI guidelines are there, which were given in 2019, and they were based on the results. What is the result of the cervical screening tests? But lately the ASCCP revised its guidelines, and now they have given risk-based guidelines, which are based on the estimation of risk of CIN3 or the higher disease. It is based on age, current result, and the previous screening methods, previous screening results, and the treatment. So based on these, you can calculate the risk of immediate CIN3 plus disease. If it is more than 4%, then colposcopy biopsy is recommended. If it is higher risk, that is, if it is more than 60%, then it is recommended that immediate treatment can be done at the same sitting. And if it is less than 4%, then 5 years risk of CIN3 plus disease is estimated. And depending on the risk, you have to follow up a patient in 5 years, 3 years, or 1 year. So this is what is the practical implication of risk stratification. It is nothing much different as compared to the earlier guidelines, except that in ASCUS, if it is HPV negative, then you can follow up after 3 years. Otherwise, if HPV 16, 18, if genotyping is done, or if ASC-H is there, or if high-grade cytology is there on cytology, HSIL is there, or if HPV 16, 18 is present with any cytology report, then immediate colposcopy and biopsy or expedited treatment, depending on the situation, is required. So from these tables, one can estimate the risk and decide for the further follow-up. Now, after the screening, if HPV isolated screening is done, one can try it with the cytology, or one can even do the HPV genotyping if possible. If cytology is done isolated, then if ASCUS is there, one can try it with the HPV testing. But finally, the ultimate diagnosis is based on the colposcopy and biopsy. Now, these are the lesions that we look for on colposcopy, and abnormal epithelium, estovite areas, or the vascular changes are there. So biopsy has to be taken, 2 to 4 biopsy, or ideally all the abnormal areas should be biopsied as per the colposcopy standards by ASCCP. Now on biopsy, either we get CIN1, 2, 3, or AIS if there are intraepithelial abnormalities are there. Now CIN3 should be treated in all the cases, and CIN2, if it is high-grade intraepithelial lesion, then it has to be treated, except in certain situations when if she's a younger age group, or she's very much concerned for future reproduction career, then in those situations one can closely follow up. But if it persists because it is a high-grade lesion, then it has to be treated. If you look at the table, why this, and CIN1 is generally followed up, but if it persists for 2 years, then again it has to be treated. If you look at the CIN1, most of the more than 50% they regress, while if you look at the CIN3, 30 to 50% progress to invasive cancer. So that is why CIN3 is actually a pre-malignant condition. This was just to highlight that in CIN2, sometimes you can, in the special situation, you can just follow up, but if it persists, you have to go for the excisional therapy, you have to go for the treatment. Now for the treatment of CIN, there are ablative and excisional procedures are there. We'll just talk a little bit about them. Now how to select which treatment modality to choose? It depends on the severity of the lesion, the area of the cervix which is involved, clinical skill and experience of the person performing, and also the availability of the equipment. For the ablation, remember that we want to destroy whole of the transformation zone. For treatment of CIN, whole of the transformation zone has to be dealt with. Now the depth of the ablation should be 5 to 7 millimeters, so as to take care of all the glandular crypts. Now for the ablative procedure, whole of the lesion should be visible on the ectocervix. Lesion should be adequately covered with the probe which is selected. There should not be any evidence of glandular dysplasia or in the endocervical sampling. And women should not be pregnant, neither immediate postpartum. There should not be any active disease. Now, if there are, if the whole of the transformation zone is not visible, if it is extending inside the canal, if the endocervical sample is positive for CIN2 plus, or if previously she has been treated for CIN2 or inadequate biopsies have been taken, then the ablation should not be done. The cryotherapy is the most commonly used method for the ablation, where nitrous oxide or CO2 gas is used, which is a refrigerant gas. It decreases the temperature of the probe, and when it is applied on the cervix, then it causes the freezing of the tissue and cryonecrosis. So freeze thaw freeze cycle is used, that is 3-minute freeze and thaw for 5 minutes, and repeat the freeze cycle, and it ablates the up to 5 to 7 millimeter. I think there's no time for the videos, but I'm not able to actually control that video thing. That is why I'm not showing it. Okay. I just wanted to show that this is the probe tip now, which is applied on the cervix, and then the gas is switched on. When it passes through the probe, it causes cooling of the probe, and then you can see that ice ball is there on the periphery of the probe. So this is ice ball is formed, and this is the crater which has been created after the cryotherapy. It is very successful procedure, and few hemorrhagic complications are there because tissue is ablated. There are no adverse future obstetric adverse effects are there. Even you can use in the see and treat approach for the lesions, where you just screen, you can see it and you can treat. Even you screen and you can treat also. It is simple OPD procedure, no anesthesia is required, but it uses a bulky apparatus, refrigerant gas is required, and no tissue specimen is there. The other ablative procedure is thermal ablation, which has, in the recent years, it has again come into popularity. Now, in this, the probe is heated up to 100 degrees centigrade, and it is applied on the tissue, and it is applied for 45 to 60 seconds. Now, it also causes ablation up to the depth of 5 to 7 millimeter. So adequate ablation is done. So this is the probe which is applied, and then you can see that this is causing the ablation of the tissue. So less time is required and multiple applications can be done. So you can see the tissue has been ablated. Again, the advantages are same. Additionally, it is a very portable machine, so it can be shifted to different places, and there is very short treatment time is there, and it is automatically probe gets self-sterilized just by heating. The disadvantages also are same. Laser, if available, can be used for ablation. It has a higher success rate, and it can even very targeted therapy can be applied. So it can it has the ability to treat lesions when they are extending up to vagina also, and rapid healing is there. That is the advantage, but it is a costly apparatus, and maintenance is also costly, so it is not widely available. Now, coming on to the excisional techniques, they are preferred if they are available for CIN2 and 3. And in these techniques, as we know, that tissue will be available for histopathology. So unsuspected micro-invasion or invasion is not missed. But more technical skills are required. Now, the excisional procedure, the cone can be, in the excision, we are removing the transformation zone and whole of the endocervical canal. So when the cone is removed, it can be conical or it can be cylindrical cone. In the conical cone, at the tip, actually the glands are cut through. But if there is a glandular disease is there or endocervical tissue involvement is there, then you try to take the cylindrical cone. Now, for the excisional procedure, we can use the loop electrosurgical excision procedure, where these loops are used. They are of different sizes. So depending on how much depth of the cone we want to remove, then we select the diameter of the cone. These are thin wire loops are there, through which current is passed, and it just cuts through the tissue. For the LEAP procedure, lesion should not be extending much into the endocervical canal. The distal limit should not be more than 1 centimeter, because it can't go to so much deep. And there should not be any evidence of invasive cancer or glandular dysplasia, and no evidence of active lesion, active infection should be there. Now, so this is how you can see the transformation zone is there, and this is the loop which has been selected, and we just hit it and very smoothly it passes through the, slices through the tissue, and then you can see that tissue has been removed. This is the tissue and this is the crater which has been created. And as you can see, as compared to the ablative procedure, there is more hemorrhage is there, where ball cautery can be used to achieve the hemostasis. So it has higher success rate, and the more it can be both diagnostic and therapeutic, and tissue is available for histopathology. That is the main advantage. It's a very fast procedure. Technically, it is relatively simpler, and it can even be used for see and treat approach. But the disadvantage is that training is required, equipment is required, electricity, anesthesia, at least local anesthesia has to be given. The hemorrhage and cervical stenosis and future preterm delivery and prom risk is more as compared to ablative procedure. Now, there are certain situations where you have to take out the complete cone. So in those situations, cold knife conization is to be done. It is a more technically challenging or more advanced. It is preferred over LEEP when squamous junction is deep in the cervical canal and upper end cannot be seen, or it is more, it exceeds the excisional capacity of loop, or if there is disparity in the cytology and colposcopy, or there are glandular cell abnormalities are there, suspicion of microinvasive invasion is there. So in those cases, this is how the loop has to be removed. The disadvantage is that it requires regional or general anesthesia, and there is more risk of hemorrhage up to 5%, and more risk is there for the future obstetric adverse outcome. This is how I will just rush through it because time is not there. So we can see that how this cone has been removed. I'll just show you the cone which has been removed. So it is a procedure using the simple surgical instruments. So this is the cone which has been removed. So if you see that excisional procedure, they got higher risk of complications. Now, in certain situations where there is widespread vaginal extension, or if it is a recurrent CIN where you can't go for the excisional procedure, adenocarcinoma in situ is there, or if there is flush cervix is there, sometimes you can go for the, or if there is associated pathology, then you can go for the hysterectomy in this situation. And just a word about abnormal granular cell on cytology. If they are there, then endometrial sampling and endocervical sampling has to be done. If there is adenocarcinoma in situ, then you have to go for diagnostic excisional procedure to rule out the invasive cancer. And if margins are negative, then you have to go for the hysterectomy. So post-treatment, you have to follow up these ladies, that close follow-up after high-grade HSIL or CIN 2 or 3 has been treated. Then you have to follow up at 6 monthly till 3 consecutive negative reports are there. But after that, there is continued surveillance at 3 years with the HPV testing. Base test is required, and it should be continued for at least 25 years. But if HPV testing is not there and you want to go for the cytology, then you have to do it more frequently. So that's all. Thank you. Hello.
Dr. Lakshmi, thank you so much for an elaborative session. Now now we move on to the next session. I request Dr. Radhika to please present her slides.
I should stop.
No issues, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. So I am going to also address another aspect of gynecology, and that is on the contraceptives, the recent updates. So as we have tried to do with the book, here too I am trying to bring out the important recent advances and updates, especially with respect to the contraceptives that are available in our country. So with that,
Radhika, your slide has not come, ma'am, so far.
now is it coming?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
trying to
ma'am.
fill
You
in.
can maximize
Yeah,
it. You can
it'll
maximize it.
Yeah, I am just doing that. It's
Sure,
for some
sure.
reason it's taking time. So I would just like to go on with the presentation because of the limited time. So what I wish to say is there is a huge choice of contraceptives that is already available in the market, you know. But however, there is always scope for more because people would like to have the contraceptives which have got a lesser side effect, which has got easy applicability, more number of male contraceptives, so on and so forth. So because of this reason, there is always developments going on in the direction of contraceptives, and I thought this was a good forum for me to address the same. So is it now visible? Is it okay now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So I'm just going to breeze through this talk, not too many details. So starting with the hormonal contraceptives, these are the various types of progestins which are used. Starting from the first generation, earlier it used to be the first generation. Now we are into the third generation and the unclassified forms. And the estrogen component of the contraceptives are the estradiol valerate and 17-beta estradiol. Newer formulations are multiphasic. The contraceptive efficacy of the newer progestins is very similar to the older ones. However, we have the advantage of having lesser side effects in terms of lesser effects on carbohydrate and lipid metabolism. So we now have this 4-phase pill, which is also available in India. It is available by any of these names, but in India you have Veronica Combi Kit. Now it's a combination of estradiol valerate and dynogest. There is as you can find here, there is a stepwise decrease in the estrogen component, whereas there is a rise in the dynogest component throughout the cycle. So the advantage is the lesser exposure to estrogen and all the benefits of dynogen, which is a type of a selective progesterone receptor modulator. Then you have the extended cycle regime, seasonal. I think majority of us might be already aware of. This was to be taken continuously for 84 days with a break for 7 days. Levonorgestrel and estradiol were the combinations available. However, today we have something called continuous. One could take this for 365 days in the year without a break. 90 micrograms of levonorgestrel with 20 micrograms of ethylene estradiol. However, the long-term safety profile is still under study. Progesterone only. Now there is a huge array of the formulations which are available in India. Now these could be norethisterone, norgestrel or desogestrel and levonorgestrel. Advantage is these can be used in the immediate postpartum period, and because of the lack of the estrogen component, there are the other advantages because of the side effects that are associated with estrogens. Then you have the transdermal contraceptive delivery system, the patch, gel, and the spray. Now, Xulane is something that was introduced in US many years back, and now it is also available in India. Now, it is in the form of a patch which is applied to the buttock, abdomen or upper abdomen, anywhere which is away from the breast. 3 weeks on and 1 week off, and it is to be replaced every week starting from first day of the period or the nearest Sunday after the onset of menses, or it could be even more than 4 weeks after delivery of the baby. If it is initiated more than 5 days from the onset of menses, a backup contraceptive is advised, and it is a combination of the newer progesterone, that is norelgestomine, along with ethinyl estradiol. Advantage, like I said, once a week dosing and avoids the first pass metabolism, and the newer progesterone has minimal androgenicity. However, there could be some breakthrough bleeding as well as mastalgia and with minor skin irritation. In the same direction of the applications on the skin, the transdermal system, we have Twirla, which is again better. The Twirla used to be available earlier also, but here it is basically several layers of active and inactive ingredients which are present together with the adhesives. The advantage is reduced adhesive seepage around the edge, thereby lesser skin reaction and better patient complaints. Because of that, it has completed phase 3. The Population Council has come out with gel. This is available both for the males as well as the female. The female one is a combination of nesterone along with estradiol, and the male is nesterone with testosterone, and it is a gel which is available for the males. We also have the metered transdermal system, which can be administered as a preset dose of nesterone once a day. And it is a fast drying spray, and there is a slow absorption of the drug through the blood over a period of hours. And this is undergoing phase 1 trial. Not yet available in India. Now we go on to the injectables, the implants of the vaginal ring. Cyclophem or mesechina is available in India. It's a monthly injection containing medroxyprogesterone acetate or 50 milligrams of Neten, norepinephrine enanthate, along with 5 milligrams of estradiol sapionate, and it has got a good protection of 94 to 99%. It has completed phase 3 trials in India. Thianapres has been recently introduced by the Ministry of Health. We had the DMPA as in the basket of choices for contraceptives. Now this is a depot subcutaneous injectable, 104 milligrams of medroxyprogesterone acetate in 0.65 ml of injection with a 30% reduction in the dose of DMPA. Subcutaneous administration, it has got a slower and more sustained absorption of progestin, and it is 62% lighter and less voluminous compared to DMPA. It is available as a uniject system, meaning you inject it only once and it is inject and throw away. It is now available in India. And then you come to the implants. We know we have gone from Norplant, and today we talk about the Uniplant. These are the various changes that happened during the course of development of the implants. Today we can talk about Capronor, not available in India yet. Capronor 3 and Capronor 2. These basically have levonorgestrel as the major component. The advantage is these don't have to be removed. Once they are injected, once they are inserted in the body, they are biodegradable. The other one that has been recently introduced in India is still undergoing trials, but now there is activity towards release into the market. This is the Implanon Next, or it is also called as the Nexplanon. It is a 40 millimeter by 2 semi-rigid plastic containing etonogestrel, and it is slowly released, and it's got a life of about 3 years. We also have the vaginal rings, which are they have the function similar to the NuvaRing. However, here there is a longer duration of efficacy for a period of 1 year and contains nesterone along with 15 micrograms of ethinyl estradiol. So it lasts for about 13 cycles. It is still awaiting the FDA approval. Now, coming to the intrauterine devices, again, I'm sure well aware, starting from the first generation, the Lippes loop and the Dalcon shield. Today in India, we have Copper T, 380A and Multilode, which are available in the basket of choices from the Ministry of Health. However, because of the mild discomfort and the menorrhagia and the minimum side effects which can be there for the initial few months after insertion, people have also thought about other the applications which could be better fitted into the uterine cavity. So these are the frameless and the flexible IUDs. Now this is available in the form of starting with Mirena. Not only it's got a the contraceptive benefit, it's now very widely used for the menstrual dysfunction. But other than the Emily is now available in India, it is a lesser cost than Mirena. But then today we have LNG 13.5, Skyla or Jadis is the brand name it is available. And as you can find here, there is a reduction in the size of the intrauterine contraceptive device. And the amount of levonorgestrel has also been reduced progressively from the erstwhile preparations to what is available today. So while the 52 milligrams of levonorgestrel containing devices were approved for a duration of 5 years, the lower ones is for a period of about 3 years. Now, LNG iOS 12 is also there. It is undergoing, it has been licensed in US, not yet available in India. Then we have the frameless devices, the Gynefix copper, which is basically a thread with the copper cylinders which have been attached. It takes the shape of the uterine cavity. Therefore, it is better tolerated, lesser expulsions. Nitinol is basically one thread containing copper T, the copper balls which have been strung on the thread. And then you also have the Fibroplant, which is a frameless LNG releasing IUD, which can be inserted into the uterine cavity. Coming to the emergency contraceptive, ulipristal acetate has been recently approved by the Ministry of Health in July 2020 for use. It is a selective progesterone receptor modulator. It binds to the progesterone receptors and stops the pre-ovulatory surge of the luteinizing hormone, thereby preventing ovulation. And also it creates desynchrony between the zygote and the fallopian tube. The single dose of 30 milligram, which is within 5 days of unprotected coitus, has been found to be effective, and it is metabolized by cytochrome P50 in the liver, and thereby the drugs like phenytoin and carbamazepine have been found to be marginally reducing its efficacy. However, there is no contraindication to its use as an emergency contraceptive pill. There is ongoing research in the direction of vaginal ring releasing uniprostryl acetate. We also have the immunocontracectives, the anti-sperm and anti-ovum vaccines, and we are very proud about the anti-HCG vaccine, which has been, the research has been going on for many, many years, starting from 1990s. The research still goes on, but I think it is nearing now there is now the marketing strategies on. Anti-sperm vaccines basically address the functional antigens and the structural antigens, and the research is going on. We don't have them yet available in the market. We also have the anti-ovum vaccines, which are focused on the antigen, focused on the surface, as well as the antigen of the zona pellucida. It basically causes an inflammatory reaction, thereby preventing implantation. There is ongoing research. Anti-conceptives vaccines are basically focused on the placenta-specific antigens and also the pregnancy-specific beta-1 glycoprotein. Ongoing research. Male hormonal contraceptives, we have the testosterone in its various formulations, the undecanoate, which is an oral single dose, 17-alpha methyl testosterone, again the oral formulation, transdermal patch, gel, as well as the dihydrotestosterone gels are undergoing research. Then we have the subcutaneous implants, the testosterone implant as well as MENT, that is 7-alpha methyl 19 nortestosterone implant. Phase 2 trials are going on. We also have the developing testosterone buccal system, which is required to be applied twice a day. It is available under the brand name of Straint, and this is available not in our country. It is available in the European countries. But however, it is to be remembered that majority of these testosterone preparation have liver toxicity, so that kind of caution requires to be used. Coming to the non-hormonal contraceptives, again, there is a resurgence of the use of diaphragm. Traditionally, many years back, diaphragm used to be propagated not only because of the benefit of contraceptive, but also the protection against the STIs, that is a sexually transmitted diseases. Sorry. So now again, it has come to the fore, and it is being propagated by the PATH, which is the NGO. And so is the case with the women's condom. It has come, they have got it now with a different avatar. What it basically has is a polyurethane condom pouch. And if you carefully see here, you have the foam dots which improve the adherence to the vaginal walls, thereby the expulsion rates are lesser. And there is a softer outer vaginal ring which prevents a slippage. And there is a dissolving capsule at the tip, which is basically a spermicidal medicine which is kept at the top, and this improves the efficacy of the female condom. A word about the intra-vas device. I think majority of us might be aware of the injectable silicone plugs. It became very popular in the earlier days. But a word about Risuk, which is our own Indian preparation. Now here, polymer gel of styrene malic acid is combined with dimethyl sulfoxide, and this is injected into the vas deferens. The advantage over the silicone plug is that it is reversible. Contraceptive, the effect of this blockage can be reversed by flushing with soda bicarb. So this is almost it has completed the phase 3 trials and going to be marketed. So there are many other developments. There are microchip drug release technology. This allows the progesterone release to be used on the microchip, which is implanted for a period of 16 years, can be switched on and switched off with a remote control, causing immediate and deactivation, and this would actually, it is expected to allow a planned pregnancy. Then you also have, contraceptive tactics which prevent the sperm from developing, the eggs to be preserved for later development, the H2 gamendazole and mullerian inhibition substance. So they are all in the early research. So I would like to conclude to say that while research and development will continue for more acceptable and customized contraceptives, we still need to look at the unmet need, especially in our country. We are happy that there is a fall in the population growth, but still much more needs to be done. And, the research will continue. We need to be aware of the ongoing developments. However, it is important to remember that counseling and IEC would continue to remain the backbone of the family welfare program. So thank you so much for a patient hearing.
Thank you so much, Radhika. It is again a laboratory one on the newer techniques that has been developed and introduced in the Indian market, and what has been introduced in the foreign market also. Now that as we come to the formal official launch of a Barrack and Novak's Gynecology, I think it itself is a very big brand in terms of gynecology is concerned. So I believe Dr. Radhakrishnan, I request Dr. Radhakrishnan, as she must have gone through the book in her years when she was also studying, and going through this course, this subject itself. I still currently also she's going through this. So, ma'am, can you say something about this book that we have?
Thank you, Mr. Ravi. It really gives me a great pleasure to be part of this recent advances in gynecology and the book launch, especially. And this is the 16th edition of Barrack and Novak's, and with the South Asian edition. I think all of us in this August virtual audience, I think at some time or the other, regularly read the book of Novak's Gynecology in its various forms, from edition to edition, right from our PG days, as teachers and as consultants, and continue to cherish their various chapters, which are very simplified and easy to understand format. What makes this book special is there is a lot of Indian data and Asian data, which are the core essentials for anybody practicing in our country, so that we are aware of the scenario in which we are practicing, and so that we don't have to run to different books while knowing about the status of each particular condition with respect to our country. And the day is made more special for me to be present to launch this book. Is edited by two of my closest faculty members with whom I've been associated for more than 2 decades, Dr. Radhika and Dr. Rashmi. If I had to take two faculty members from UCMS with whom I was very close, and these are the two faculty members. So I wish them all the very best in all their future endeavors. And if I just brief through that book, certain highlights I can just specify here. It gives a very beautiful outlay of the Indian health conditions in various diseases. The basic concepts and the applied surgical anatomy is very well, beautifully elucidated. And the prevalent of Indian conditions, more responsibly, the tuberculosis, the various symptoms and the way it presents has been very highly highlighted, very beautifully highlighted. The National Family Welfare Program, with Government of India's recommendation on PPIUCD, the latest MTP Act, all these find place in this current book, which is very, very relevant to our practice day to day. The NACO guidelines on RTIs and R8 respiratory tract infection and sexually transmitted infections are very nicely written, especially even the syndromic approach, even though it's a WHO world over it is practiced, the syndromic approach is very nicely given, good thought of. The Indian contributions to gynae surgery, which is very, very important, of which we all take good pride of, especially the sling surgeries for nulliparous prolapse, which the rest of the world does not know much. Even our own students as PGs and registrars, when we try to find out, we need to go back to the old nomograms or some monograms or something. Now this is very, very available in this book, which is very easily referred to. And that's a highlight of one of the highlights. The cancer scenario in Indian population, especially the epidemiology and the screening guidelines of FOXI, has been very nicely presented also by Rashmi right now, and they feature very beautifully in the book. The flow charts of managements and treatment, they form an easy guide and very easy to understand. So there are many, many more things. I have not been able to go through the entire book. Obviously, it was not possible. But from what I gathered, it's going to be of great, great use to all levels of gynecologists, from the budding gynecologist, the senior gynecologist. And I wish them all a very good luck, and wish you also, Walters and Kloberg team, very best wishes for good marketing and good sales from here on. Thank you so much.
So I
Thank you,
think
Dr.
before, yeah, Ravi, may I take a few minutes?
Please, ma'am. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah. So, ma'am, thank you so much. I think we, especially myself and Rashmi, we are extremely fortunate to have you bless this occasion. And like Dr. Geeta said, of my about 28 plus years of stay at UCMS and GTB Hospital, I have spent about 26 plus years with her, and she has actually, brought us up from what should I say, from the nascent stage to what we are today. So thank you so much, ma'am, for guiding us in every way and in not only professionally and everything in life. And for rest of the audience, everybody knows about Dr. Geeta. I just wish to say that she's a true academician. She's got a intellect of the sharpest kind, and innumerable publications, and very keen teacher. So thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you as always for being with us, like you have always been there earlier. So thank you so much.
I would have come even physically if it was required for you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Dr. Geeta.
Ma'am, thank
My
you.
pleasure. My pleasure.
Radhika, Dr. Rashmi, ma'am, I just request you that if we have a physical copy available of the book, can we put it on a display, and so we can have a snapshot of the formal launch of the book.
We got
Yeah,
the
just a
book.
minute, please. I'll need to get. Yeah, I'll
Sure,
just
ma'am.
get it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Geeta. Thank you, ma'am. So Dr. Geeta had been my teacher actually. She's
Great, ma'am. Great.
not had been, she's always my teacher.
It would have been nice if
We're all
Dr.
learning every day, so everybody is a teacher now. Even my students are my teachers. I mean, we learn more from students
You
actually.
remain the guru.
Can we just put it on the screen, and yeah, just like that. Just
Yeah. So
hold on.
now,
Let me
I
click the
think
picture.
Rashmi has mirrored her image, while mine is not mirrored. And Dr. Geeta would have.
मेरा उल्टा आ रहा है. Just a minute.
Ma'am,
Let
ma'am,
me,
ma'am, it's
Rashmi
perfectly
का
fine,
बिल्कुल
ma'am.
सही आ रहा है.
but I'm not able to
Mine
do
is
that.
fine.
They
It's
just
quite
hold
fine.
it that way. I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
they
Just hold on, ma'am.
want-
Just give me a sec, ma'am.
Yeah.
Just like this, ma'am. Just like this. Great. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And ma'am, it has been a really pleasure, for Waters Kluwer that we have been publishing this book, and now we have come out with a great support from your end, that we have come out with a South Asian edition of this book, wherein we have it's a legacy book for us, for Waters Kluwer. It itself is a brand, and we're going to promote it. And I request all the audience, to go through this essay edition with a lot of Indian content has been added by Dr. Radhika and Dr. Rashmi to this. And my a great pleasure and thanks to Dr. Geeta Radhakrishnan, who has taken a time out and be a part of this formal webinar on this session. And thank you so much, Dr. Rashmi and Dr. Radhika, who has now made themselves available for this session. And thank you all the audience who has taken time out to be part of this session. Again, I'm from Waters Kluwer. We again we again promise you that we'll bring out some more session on all different subjects, that we bring out books and content. Now from Waters Kluwer again, Merry Christmas to all our attendees and the panelists, and a Happy New Year to all of them. So with this, I can go this session, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ravi, Binny. Thank you, Binny, for being there. And many thanks to you again, ma'am. Thank you so much.
So wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yeah. So
Thank you, ma'am.
goodbye to the audience and a very Happy New Year to all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay.